Welcome to a night of enchantment with sleepy history tales. Tonight, we're taking a trip back in time to medieval England. A world where laws were harsh, justice was swift, and mercy was rare. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you accidentally became a criminal in such a dark time? Would you survive a day? Stay until the end of the video to find out. But first, if you love history stories told in a relaxing style like this, please like and subscribe to support me. And don't forget to comment where you're listening to this video and what time. I'm always curious to know where Sleepy History Tales has been around the world. Now turn down the lights, turn on a fan if you like some soothing background noise, and get ready to relax. Congratulations! You have just woken up one morning in 1202, right in the bustling city of Lincoln in the north of England. This is an important commercial center with narrow cobbled streets, ancient stone walls and the strong smell of daily life filling the air. The great cathedral bells ring in the distance, as residents are busy setting up stalls, transporting goods and making a living. Sounds lively, right? But don't let that peaceful appearance fool you. Lincoln is currently in the midst of a crime wave. In just a short time, there have been more than 100 murders, nearly 90 robberies, and dozens of fights resulting in serious injuries. However, only 2 people have been executed. You might think that's a pretty easy rate if you're planning on starting a career in crime, but don't be complacent. Medieval justice always has a way of finding you, unexpectedly and ruthlessly. You wake up in a cold loft above a tavern. The wooden floors are creaky underfoot, and the cobblestone streets are covered in fog outside the window. You're hungry, you have no money, and you're considering a risky option. Steal something from the market? Before you make that decision, let me tell you about the strange and terrifying legal system of the time. There are no police, no surveillance cameras, no fingerprint tests. But there's something even more terrifying. Everyone knows everyone else, and any stranger, like you, stands out like a peacock in a chicken coop. You step out into the street, where the cold morning wind creeps into your clothes. On the edge of town, a corpse rack stands tall, with the body of a dead man dangling, a silent warning to anyone who might consider breaking the rules here. Just as you were about to leave, a hoarse voice rang out in your ear. Thinking of causing trouble? An old man with a white beard and a face of experience looked at you sternly. See that body? That's the price you pay for daring to cross the sheriff, or stealing from merchants. You argued, but I heard that many people here commit crimes and get away with it. He sneered. Some get away, until they can't get away anymore. Want to continue diving into the world of medieval crime? Stay with Sleepy History Tales to discover the rest, where every action has a price, and survival is an art. In this era, breaking the law is more than just dangerous, it can be a death sentence. There are no lawyers, no right to remain silent, and little formal investigation. Just being known as a bad person is enough to be convicted. As you continue to walk through the crowded market, you begin to notice the clear class distinctions in society. A well-dressed gentleman walks by, and the crowd automatically steps aside as if not daring to impede the nobleman's progress. But just a few steps away, a ragged beggar is roughly shoved away from the bakery counter. Get out, the apprentices shout. Don't beg here. You suddenly realize, your own appearance and strange gait are causing people to look at you with suspicion. In medieval society, status was determined from birth. Having no steady job, no identification, or a clear job can get you classified as a vagrant, a punishable offense. Your stomach growls again. A woman selling bread looks at you warily. You need money, fast, or else your hunger might make you make a mistake. You decide to try your luck by approaching a big man who is unloading goods. "Do you need any help?" you ask. He looks you up and down, then nods. "You look strong. Help me load these boxes onto the truck, and I'll give you a coin and a meal." It's not much, but at least it's honest work, and at the moment, it might be the wisest choice. While you work, you strike up a conversation with him to learn more about this strange city. "Have you been in Lincoln long?" he asks, carrying a large box. "Just a passerby," you reply, not wanting to reveal too much. "How's life here?" He wipes his sweat. "It's a good town, but there's been a lot of trouble lately. Last month, a gang of thieves broke into Thomas's silver shop, stole everything, and beat him almost to death." "Have they been caught?" you ask. "One of them," he says simply. "And he was hanged. That's what it's like to be caught stealing. But if you take anything of small value, less than 12 cents, you'll probably just get whipped or locked in a cage in the middle of the street." You help him finish his job. True to his word, he gives you a coin and leads you to a nearby tavern. There, you're served a thick soup of barley, beans, and roots, along with a piece of rough bread. As you eat, the tavern begins to fill up. People get off work, drink beer, play dice, and tell stories. You sit quietly listening, trying to remember all the information about life in Lincoln. A group of men at the next table are talking excitedly. "Did you hear? William the Tanner was accused of stealing silver cups from the church. What was he punished for?" "He had to walk 3 steps with a red-hot iron. His hands were blistered. He was definitely guilty. He's going to be hanged next week." You almost choke with shock. Trial by hot iron? That's right. During this period, trial by ordeal was still the main method of determining right and wrong. It was believed that God would protect the innocent from being burned, and anyone who was injured was clearly guilty. It wasn't until 1215 that this form of trial was abolished, but unfortunately, you live in an age where justice depends on red-hot iron bars. By the early 13th century, trials by painful ordeal were beginning to fall out of favor. The Pope had decreed that priests were no longer allowed to participate in or witness such trials. Instead, a new method emerged, trial by jury. But don't imagine the impartial, objective juries of today. These were just local men, often familiar with the defendant, and they based their verdict on reputation and personal feelings, rather than evidence. It was getting dark. You needed a place to sleep for the night. With the coin you'd earned, you could sleep on the tavern floor with other travelers. But that prospect didn't appeal. Instead, you asked what other work was available, hoping to find work and lodging. The innkeeper directed you to the home of a merchant in town. "Looking for Jeffrey. Say Watt from the tavern sent him. He always needs a strong man to help with his wool trade." You thank him and walk away, through the streets that are slowly fading into darkness. There were no streetlights in medieval cities. By sunset, honest people were usually home. Wandering around at night without a good reason was suspicious. You walk faster, feeling eyes on you from the dark corners. Jeffrey's house is larger than the others, with a shop in front and a living quarters in back. You knock on the door. A young apprentice opens it, staring at you. "I was told by Watt from the tavern," you explain. "I'm looking for work. He said Jeffrey might need help." He disappears inside, then returns with an older man. His clothes, though not fancy, are of good quality and neatly tailored. This must be Jeffrey, the wool merchant. What sent you? His eyes were sharp. I have a wool cart coming tonight. There's been a lot of theft lately, and I need someone to look after it. Do you know how to defend yourself? You nodded. I can do that, sir. Okay, you'll stay here and watch the cart until morning. I'll pay you 3p, and you can sleep in the warehouse tomorrow. A fair offer, and a lot better than getting into trouble with the law on your first day in medieval England. You agreed. Jeffrey led you to where the cart would be waiting. The city was now dark. You stood guard at the edge of Jeffrey's backyard, where the cart would arrive. Only a few guards were passing by, holding lanterns. Singing and laughter drifted in the wind from the nearby taverns, but otherwise the night was strangely dark, a far cry from the bustle of the modern city you knew. The cart finally arrived just before the city gates closed. There are two people following the carriage, the coachman and a guard, both tired from the long journey. They eye you suspiciously, until Jeffrey appears and makes it clear that you will be helping keep watch tonight. Let no one near, he warns. Len is worth a fortune now. There are people waiting for an opening to strike. You nod, promising to be vigilant despite your exhaustion. The other guard takes the first shift, leaving you to rest. After midnight, you take over. Lying down in a corner of the courtyard, you ponder all you have seen and learned about medieval law. A world where justice can come from hearsay, where punishments, hangings, floggings, mutilations, are not just punishments, but also deterrents for the community. And yet, crime still occurs. The gap between rich and poor, the lack of law enforcement, all of it makes for a world of uncertainty. When hunger and desperation overcome the fear of punishment, people will still commit crimes. A gentle nudge wakes you. It's your shift. The night sky is dark, the clouds obscuring the stars. A drizzle begins to fall. You quietly patrol the cart, seeking shelter under the awning when you can. Your ears listen for every little sound. Then, footsteps. Many people. They're trying to walk quietly, but you can still hear them. Your heart races, and you duck into the shadows. 3 figures appear at the edge of the yard, approaching the cart. 3 figures approach the cart. They are dressed in dark clothes, their faces partially covered with cloth. One carries what looks like a crowbar. You clear your throat loudly. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The 3 of them stop abruptly. The tallest one steps forward. His voice is deep and menacing. And who are you? I'm guarding this cart for Mr. Jeffrey, the wool merchant, you reply, trying to keep your voice even. You'd better go, before the real trouble starts. The man laughs, a dry laugh that echoes through the night. The 3 of us, you alone. Trouble's coming, isn't it? You're about to reply when an upper window opens. Jeffrey's voice rings out clearly in the night. What's going on down there, John? William, come out. The 3 strangers glance at each other, hesitant. When the people inside the house began to become alert, they retreated, disappearing into the darkness. Before they disappeared, one of them called back. We'll remember you, stranger. Jeffrey ran down the steps to the yard, followed by 2 burly men, probably his servants. They were after the wool? He asked. Yes, you confirmed. 3 of them, but they ran away when you called. Jeffrey nodded, his face dark. It's getting more common. Last month, Martin the dyer was robbed of his goods. One of his apprentices was stabbed right behind the warehouse. He sighed. There was a time when merchants didn't have to worry about robberies every night. "Where are the sheriff's patrols?" you asked. Jeffrey's lips curled bitterly. "There are only a few sheriffs in the city. They can't be everywhere, and in fact," he paused, "some of them are no better than thieves." Through that, you learn more about the realities of medieval law enforcement. Unlike modern police with their professional systems, sheriffs were the king's representatives, collecting taxes, keeping order, enforcing sentences, but they were few in number. Patrols were largely done by the people themselves. When there was a thief, the people would shout, hue and cry, and anyone who heard it was their responsibility to chase the criminal. Add to that corruption. Those in power were often willing to take bribes or even aid the criminals themselves. The rest of the night passed peacefully, though you had trouble sleeping after the confrontation. When dawn came, Jeffrey saw you again. He smiled with satisfaction, gave you the promised 3 coins, and showed you to a small storage room to rest. "If you need permanent employment," he said, "I need someone like you. Times are uncertain. A man who can keep his cool is a valuable asset." A generous offer. Not just a job, but a chance to gain a foothold in the society of the time. As a servant to a merchant, you would have food, shelter, and protection. For in this world, a vagrant without connections, without a place to turn, is easily suspected, or gets into trouble with no way out. You lay down on the pallet in the storage room, tired. But your mind was still full of thoughts. You had avoided the wrong path, found honest work. But you had also seen clearly. The temptation to sin was everywhere. And the punishment, hanging, amputation, was terrible. The cart you've been guarding is more than just a few skeins of wool. It's a fortune. In the medieval economy, wool was England's most valuable export. In a city like Lincoln, the wool trade was a major pillar. Stealing wool was considered a capital crime, and if caught, hanging was almost certain. You close your eyes, drifting off to sleep. Images of the gallows on the edge of town, trials by ordeal, and the 3 thieves in the night linger in your mind. A society that tries to maintain order through fear and punishment, but always teeters on the edge of chaos. And you wonder? Tomorrow, what does it hold? Welcome to the dangerous and fascinating world of medieval England, where the line between survival and crime is as thin as a spider's web. Your first day teaches a clear lesson. Here, choosing the path of crime can bring quick rewards, but the consequences can also be immediate and permanent. You wake up to the early morning bells of a nearby church. Sunlight filters through the small window of Jeffrey's storeroom. For a moment, you're still in a daze, suspended between the modern world you left behind and this harsh medieval reality. Memories of yesterday flood back. Your arrival in Lincoln, your encounter with the thieves in the night, and Jeffrey's offer of steady work. You stretch, getting off the hard pallet, when there's a commotion outside. Curious, you step outside the merchant's house. A crowd has gathered in the street. People jostled, tiptoeing forward. Their voices were a mixture of excitement and anger. "What's going on?" you asked a young woman standing nearby. "They've got the warrants," she said, her eyes wide. "The whole family. They've been stealing all over town for years. Finally caught." The name Warrant sounded familiar. In the records of the period, you had read about a notorious family of thieves in Norfolk, not far from Lincoln. They had been in court many times for theft, but strangely enough, always got away with it. Interested, you joined the stream of people following the arrested toward the center of town. There were 4 of them. 2 men, 2 women, led away in handcuffs by the sheriff's men. They didn't look too shabby, nor too intimidating, just an ordinary family. But according to the whispers around them, they had been blamed for dozens of thefts. They took my best winter coat, an old woman whispered angrily. I hope they get hanged this time, and it's worth it. Not likely, the woman standing next to her replied. The warrants always get away. They have friends everywhere, all powerful people. As the crowd reached the market square, you saw that a field court had been set up. A man in a formal robe sat behind a desk, surrounded by clerks and officials. This was the traveling magistrate, the king's representative, who tried serious cases beyond the jurisdiction of the local courts. You found yourself fascinated by the sight, a rare opportunity to see medieval law in action. Geoffrey would not wait for you immediately, and you decided to stay and watch. One by one, the warrants were brought before the court. The charges were read out in the square. Theft of cloth worth 60 shillings. Theft of clothing worth 8 shillings. And a host of other thefts. From what you have learned about medieval justice, these crimes deserved severe punishment. But as the trial progressed, things got strange. 0 hours 21 minutes and 55 seconds. Witnesses who had been loud in the streets became hesitant and faltering in their speeches before the magistrate. Evidence that seemed certain was disputed and dismissed. And when the jury, 12 local men, was called to deliver their verdict, they pronounced not guilty. A ripple of surprise ran through the crowd, but no one was too surprised. This was just another miraculous escape for the Warrant family. When they are released, they are neither happy nor frightened, just used to it. You listen to 2 well-dressed men standing nearby talking in hushed tones. Another bag of silver well spent, one says, a smile on his lips. The jury knows who's feeding them. The other replies. The sheriff won't be happy. That's the 3rd time this year. He's got a deal. The first shrugs. Why do you think the warrants never get caught? Someone always tells them before the soldiers get there. This conversation awakens you. A truth slowly dawns on you. Medieval law can be cruel, but it can also be bent by power and money. The medieval legal system, though brutal, was full of loopholes. Juries could be bribed, officials could be bribed to look the other way. And the powerful often escaped punishment, which the poor suffered most of. As the crowd began to disperse, you walked alongside an older man who had been watching the trial with a look of disapproval on his face. Is this the first time you've seen a warrant get away with anything? He asked, noticing your curious gaze. You nodded, not wanting to reveal too much about your background. It's been going on for years. He shook his head in dismay. John Warrant was hanged in 1321 for stealing 8 shillings worth of clothes. But his brothers learned their lesson. Now they share the profits with the important people. The jury, the constable, even the deputy sheriff. Isn't that a bit risky? You ask, bribing officials, I mean. The old man laughs dryly. Less risky than stealing, if done properly. Corruption exists at all levels, from the lowest policeman to the highest judge. Just a few years ago, William Thorpe, the Chief Justice of the King's High Court, was arrested for accepting bribes. You nod, silently agreeing. This all fits with what you've read. The medieval law was strict, but it was undermined by the people who enforced it. Those with money could buy freedom. Those without were punished with the harshest punishments. The conversation is interrupted by shouts from a nearby street. People start running toward the sound, and you follow, unable to resist your curiosity. In a corner near the church, a man is being chased. "Catch the thief!" someone shouts, and immediately, everyone around joins in. You suddenly realize this is the hue and cry system, a call for the whole community to hunt down the criminal. A form of collective arrest in the Middle Ages, where anyone who hears the call is obliged to join in the pursuit. The fleeing man looks desperate. His eyes dart around, searching for an escape route. He rushes toward the church door, perhaps hoping to find refuge in the sanctuary. For a moment, you think he'll make it, but then he stumbles. Immediately, the pursuers rush in, holding him tight amid the shouts. "I didn't do anything," he protests, "there's no evidence." "We caught you with your wallet in your hand," one of the men holding him shouts. The woman saw it clearly. A well-dressed woman approaches, pointing. "That's him. He cut my purse when I came back from the market." The thief's face turns pale. All avenues of retreat are blocked. The sheriff's men arrive, take the prisoner and the evidence, a small purse, apparently cut from the woman's belt. "What will happen to him?" you ask a bystander. "It depends on what's in the purse," the man replies. "If it's worth more than 12 pence, he'll definitely be hanged. If it's less, he might just lose a hand, or get whipped." The way the man says it, as light as if he's telling an everyday story, sends a chill down your spine. In this world, the line between life and death can be decided by a few coins. Stealing property worth more than a shilling is considered a capital crime, punishable by death. As the thief is being led away, you notice a small object fall from his pocket. No one notices, and you bend down to pick it up. It's a small piece of carved wood, a dagger crossed with a key. You don't know what the symbol is, but your instinct tells you it could be important. You put it in your pocket and head back to Jeffrey's house. After all you've seen, you're even more aware of the responsibility you have. Protecting the merchant's goods in the troubled city of Lincoln. When you enter, Jeffrey is sitting in the accounting office, diligently filling out the books. He looks up at you and gestures for you to sit down. "You saw the warrant trial," he says. "It's not a question, it's a statement." "Yes," you say, "and then there's the robbery." Jeffrey nodded, his expression grim. Two sides of the same coin. The poor man who gets caught will be hanged, and the warrants will be released, as usual. He sighed. "But I didn't call you here to discuss justice." "A matter of justice," Jeffrey said, his voice quiet. He closed the ledger, his tired eyes looking at you through the soft yellow light of a nearby candle. "I have a favor to ask of you." You fell silent, waiting for him to continue. "There's a shipment coming into Lincoln tomorrow morning," he said slowly. "Cloths, silks, fine wools, and some luxury items from York. Very expensive, but there are rumors that bandits are operating around the North Gate." Jeffrey straightened, his voice becoming serious. "I want you to meet the caravan outside the city, and escort them back safely. Can you do that?" You nodded. After what you'd just seen, you knew that even a few rolls of cloth could be worth a life in this city. Jeffrey looked relieved. "When should I go?" you asked. "At dawn," he replied, "before they ambush you. Take the small path along the Fosdyke River. Less people, but quick and discreet." He stood up, then reached into his desk drawer and pulled a small bag from it, handing it to you. "Some money to spend, and, if necessary, to buy silence." You took it, feeling the weight of the metal coins in your hand. Not much, but enough to change someone's mind. On your way back to your room, you took out the small piece of wood that had fallen from the thief's pocket. The dagger and key symbol was still visible in the dim light. You turned it over, feeling the wood was worn by time, perhaps from long storage. Part of you wanted to throw it away. It could be the mark of a secret society or a gang. But another part of you wanted to hold on to it, as if you were holding a piece of something much bigger. You tucked it into your inside pocket, then blew out the candle by your bed. Outside, the city of Lincoln was slowly falling asleep. But somewhere between the cobblestone streets and the thick darkness, justice and sin continued their silent game. "Look like you've seen a ghost," he comments, taking in your tired eyes and tense posture. You hesitate, then decide to share at least part of what happened. "Someone broke in last night. They said the North Road is being watched and we should leave through the East Gate instead." Richard's expression darkens, a specific warning about our plans. How would anyone know? He trails off thinking, "Wait here. I need to talk to my father." He returns shortly. Jeffrey followed with a worried frown. "Tell me exactly what was said." "The demands merchant." You repeat the warning, omitting the part about the Thieves' Guild token. Jeffrey and Richard exchanged concerned glances. "It could be a trap," Richard says. "Send us east while they wait to ambush us there." "Or genuine information," Jeffrey counters. "Perhaps from someone in my employ who's learned of the danger, but can't reveal themselves openly." He paces the small storeroom, considering we can't cancel the shipment. "The wool is already paid for, and my reputation will suffer." After a moment's thought, he comes to a decision. "You'll leave through the North Gate as planned, but take the western fork a mile out, then circle back to the East Road. It will add an hour to your journey, but might throw off anyone watching the main roads." It's a sensible compromise, and soon you and Richard are mounted on sturdy ponies, riding through Lincoln streets as the city begins to wake. Your mount is a stocky, practical beast, not the magnificent steeds of knights and nobles, but adequate for the journey ahead. The guards at the North Gate barely glanced at you as you passed through, more concerned with those entering the city than those leaving it. Once outside the walls, the landscape opens up. Fields and scattered woodlands stretching toward the horizon with the road cutting a muddy path through them. "Stay alert," Richard advises as you ride. "Highwaymen prefer to attack where the road enters that woodland ahead. We'll be vulnerable there." You nod, hand resting on the dagger at your belt. Senses are tuned to your surroundings. The morning is clear, birds singing in the hedge, occasional travelers passing by, farmers bringing produce to market, a monk on foot, a small party of merchants headed toward Lincoln. When you reach the Western Fork, Richard leads you off the main road as planned. This smaller track is less traveled, winding between fields where peasants are already at work, bent over their planting or hoeing. Some straighten up to watch you pass, their faces weathered from lives spent in constant labor. Most crime happens in towns, Richard comments, following your gaze to the field workers. Out here, everyone knows everyone. A stranger is noticed immediately. These villagers may look harmless, but they will raise the hue and cry in an instant if they see a robbery in progress. Does that stop highwaymen, you ask? Richard shrugged. It makes them cautious. They prefer to attack quickly and disappear into the forest before anyone can organize a pursuit. Or they disguise themselves as travelers in need, then ambush those who stop to help. This conversation does little to ease your tension as you approach a densely wooded area where the path narrows considerably. Trees press close on either side, creating deep shadows despite the morning sun. It's a perfect spot for an ambush. Richard draws his sword, a short practical blade rather than a knight's long sword. Stay close, he murmurs, and be ready to ride hard if I give the word. The tension is palpable as you enter the woods, the sounds of birdsong suddenly seeming very distant. Every shadow might hide a bandit. Every rustle of leaves could signal an attack. Your pony seems to sense your anxiety, snorting and tossing its head. Halfway through the woodland, a fallen tree blocks the path. Richard reins in suddenly, scanning the surrounding trees with narrowed eyes. This wasn't here yesterday, he said quietly. And it's been cut, not fallen naturally. The trap, if it is one, is obvious but effective. To continue, you need to dismount and move the tree, making yourselves vulnerable, or leave the path to go around it, entering the deeper woods where visibility is poor. Richard. You and Richard make a hasty decision. Back to the fork, he says shortly. We'll take the main road last. You turn your horses, keeping a moderate pace so as not to attract attention. But as you reach the edge of the woods, 3 riders appear, blocking the path ahead. Stop, one of them shouts. In the name of the sheriff. Richard curses softly. The sheriff's men don't patrol this road, he whispers to you. And if they did, they wouldn't call themselves that. These are bandits. Your heart pounds in your chest. So what now? You ask. When I give you the signal, ride right into the woods, Richard says, his voice surprisingly calm. There's a stream behind it. Follow the water south, and you'll be on the main road. Then ride straight back to Lincoln. Don't stop. Before you can protest, the plan is clearly for Richard to distract the bandits while you escape. He speaks to the group in front of you. We're not carrying anything valuable, Richard says loudly. We're just meeting a wool caravan. The leader laughs. Then your purses are light. No need to leave them behind. Turn in your money and weapons, and then go wherever you want. Richard's reaction takes everyone by surprise. He suddenly stands in his stirrups, pointing behind the bandits. The sheriff's men are behind you. Run! An old trick, but still effective. 2 of the bandits instinctively turn around. Just waiting for that, Richard spurs his horse straight at them, sword drawn, shouting, "Run, now!" You hesitate for only a heartbeat, then turn your horse around, and charge into the woods to the right. Behind you, shouts and clanging metal. Richard is distracting you so you can escape. Your horse struggles through the thick undergrowth. Branches whip at your face, but you dare not stop. Your heart pounds, your breathing quickens, matching the heavy pace of your horse. And then, just as Richard said, a small stream appears in the middle of the woods. You turn your horse south, following the stream. The trees begin to thin out, the path becomes easier. After about 10 minutes, though it feels like an hour, you emerge from the woods and onto the main road leading back to Lincoln. In the dim light, you see the spire of the city church towering over the horizon. But what about Richard? The plan is to call for help, but returning to Lincoln and leading your men back will take at least an hour, and by then, it may be too late. As you hesitate, a group of horsemen approaches from the direction of the city in the distance. 5 men, fully armed, well mounted. The leader has a silver beard and a sheriff's badge on his coat. A real man, not a disguise. A rare opportunity. You immediately ride forward, waving your arms frantically. Help! There are bandits in the woods. They attacked a merchant's son. The leader reins in, sizing you up quickly. Where? You point toward the woods. A side road west, about half a mile. 3 of them, blocking the path with fallen trees. Without another word, he signals the group. Thomas, stay with this man. The others, follow me. They all gallop off toward the woods. The man named Thomas, who was assigned to stay with you, looks at you suspiciously. Why are you taking the side road west? It's been a long time since anyone used it. You explain the warning, and Jeffrey's plan to avoid an ambush on the main road. Thomas's face softens, his eyes softening. Not a bad idea, but it seems the bandits are one step ahead, he says. They've been around for months. If we catch them today, the sheriff will be very pleased. You stand there, anxious, waiting for the pursuers to return. Richard, will he survive? Did you do the right thing by leaving to find help, or should you go back to help him? Time passes slowly, each minute feeling like hours. And then, from the woods, the sound of hooves returns. To your immense relief, Richard is with them, looking battered, but very much alive. He has a cut above one eye and is holding his left arm at an awkward angle, but he manages a grin when he sees you. You found help, he called. Well done. The sheriff's men have 2 prisoners with them, bound and sullen looking. The 3rd bandit, you learn, was killed in the fight. These 2 will cave. The lead guard tells you matter-of-factly. Highway robbery is a hanging offense, but first they'll be questioned about the rest of their gang. As you and Richard ride back to Lincoln with the sheriff's men and their prisoners, he fills you in on what happened after you left. He managed to unhorse one of the bandits with his initial charge, but was then surrounded by the other 2. He was fighting for his life when the sheriff's men arrived. I've never been so glad to see the sheriff's badge, he admitted, wincing as his pony jostles his injured arm. Another few minutes and ID have been done for. When you reach Lincoln, there's a flurry of activity. The prisoners are taken to the castle dungeons. A physician is called for Richard, and you find yourself recounting the events to Jeffrey, who alternates between relief that his son is alive, and anger at the danger you both faced. This can't continue, he says. Finally, these roads must be made safe for honest merchants. I'll speak to the sheriff myself. As Richard is led away to have his wounds treated, he catches your eye. You did well today, he said. Not everyone would have kept their head in such a situation. Despite the danger you faced, there's a sense of accomplishment in his words. You came to medieval Lincoln as a stranger, yet already you found a place for yourself, earned trust, and perhaps even made a difference by helping to capture dangerous criminals. That evening, as you eat a hearty meal provided by Jeffrey's grateful wife, you reflect on the day's events, the failed ambush, Richard's bravery, the capture of the bandits, All will make for stories told around Lincoln's Tavern. Fires tonight, but you also think about the midnight visitor and their warning. Was it truly meant to help, sending you away from a planned ambush on the North Road? Or was it a deliberate attempt to direct you into danger on the Western Track? And what of the Thieves' Guild they mentioned? Is there really an organized group of criminals operating in and around Lincoln? These questions occupy your mind as you prepare for sleep, exhausted from the day's adventures, yet aware that you've barely scratched the surface of understanding crime and justice in medieval England. Tomorrow promises to bring new insights and perhaps new dangers. As you continue your unexpected journey into this harsh but fascinating past, the next morning dawns with excitement rippling through Lincoln. The capture of the highway robbers has caused quite a stir, and as you help Jeffrey in his shop, customers eagerly share rumors and speculation about the bandits and their fate. I heard they're part of a larger gang, one merchant says as Jeffrey measures out a length of fine wool, at least 20 men strong, they say, hiding somewhere in Sherwood Forest. The sheriff will get the truth out of them, another replies grimly. A few hours on the rack and they'll be naming every accomplice from here to London. UWSC at the casual mention of torture. Although trial by ordeal had been officially abolished by now, torture was still used as a means of extracting confessions or information. The rack was a particularly feared device that stretched the victim's body, causing excruciating pain and often permanent damage. Jeffrey, noting your discomfort, gives you a sympathetic glance. Not all criminals are treated so harshly, he says quietly when the customers have moved away. Those who confess quickly may be granted a cleaner death, and some escape harsh punishment altogether. Like the Warrants, you ask, reminds the family of thieves who had so remarkable conviction. Jeffrey's expression darkens. Some escape through corruption, yes, but there are other ways. A thief who can read might claim benefit of clergy, for instance. This was something you'd heard about, a legal loophole that allowed anyone who could read to be tried in ecclesiastical courts rather than secular ones. Since the church did not impose capital punishment, this often meant escaping the hangman's nose. They just have to read a psalm, you ask? Jeffrey nods. Usually the neck verse Psalm chapter 51, and they needn't even read it well. The courts are often quite lenient about what constitutes reading. It's a common escape for educated criminals. As the day progresses, you learn more about the various ways medieval criminals might avoid the worst punishments. Pregnancy could save a female convict from execution, at least temporarily. Pardons might be granted for those who agreed to serve in the king's army. And of course, sanctuary in a church offered temporary respite from justice. Lincoln Cathedral itself has been a sanctuary for many. Jeffrey tells you as you both pause for a midday meal of bread, cheese, and water. Once inside, a criminal is safe for 40 days. After that, they must either surrender to the authorities or leave the country forever. Leave the country, you ask, surprised. Abder the realm, it's called, Jeffrey explains. They walked to a port carrying a wooden cross and took the first ship out of England. If they ever return, they can be executed on sight. You try to imagine the desperation that would drive someone to accept such a fate. Giving up their home, family, and livelihood to escape punishment. Yet, compared to hanging or mutilation, permanent exile might seem merciful. Your thoughts are interrupted by a commotion outside. Richard, arm now properly bandaged, has been watching from the shop door and calls out, "They're bringing the prisoners to the castle." The whole town's turning out to see. Jeffrey sighed, but nods for you both to go ahead. Just be back before sunset, he instructs. We have a shipment to prepare for tomorrow. You and Richard join the crowd flowing toward Lincoln Castle where criminals were held before. Trial. The atmosphere is almost festive with vendors selling food and drink to spectators eager for a glimpse of the captured bandits. People love a good spectacle. Richard comments as you push through the throat. Executions draw even bigger crowds. Sometimes they bring their children to watch. This casual attitude toward public executions is jarring to your modern sensibilities, but it's consistent with what you know of medieval views on justice. Harsh punishments were seen not just as retribution, but as deterrence, visible warnings to others who might consider similar crimes. As you near the castle, the crowd's excitement peaks. The two captured bandits are being led through the gates, chained and surrounded by guards. They look less threatening now than they did on the woodland path. Just ordinary men, dirty and disheveled. Their expressions a mixture of defiance and fear. A man near you spits in their direction. "Hang the bastards," he shouted, and others took up the cry. The guards hurry their prisoners inside, away from the increasingly hostile crowd. Will they be tried first? You ask Richard, having to raise your voice above the noise. Of course, he replies. The law must be followed, but the outcome is certain. They were caught in the act of highway robbery, and there are multiple witnesses, including us and the sheriff's men. They'll hang as sure as sunrise. The crowd lingers outside the castle gates for a while, but when it becomes clear that nothing more will happen today, people gradually disperse. Richard suggests visiting a nearby tavern, and you follow, glad to escape the oppressive atmosphere. The tavern is crowded but welcoming, filled with the smell of roasting meat and the sound of animated conversation. You find a spot at a long table and Richard fetches 2 tankards of ale. "To survive our first highway robbery," he says, raising his drink in a toast. You clink tankards and drink. The ale is weaker than you're used to, but refreshing after the dusty streets. As you take in your surroundings, you notice a group of men in one corner who seems to be watching the tavern door with unusual intensity. One of them, you realize with a start, has a familiar wooden token visible on the table before him, carved with a dagger crossing a key. Not wanting to stare, you casually mention to Richard that you're curious about the different kinds of people who frequent the tavern. "Everyone comes here," he says with a shrug. "Merchants, craftsmen, travelers, even some of the cathedral clergy when they thought no one's watching." He takes another drink, and yes, probably a fair few criminals as well. "Criminals?" you echo, feigning surprise. "Even with the sheriff's castle so close," Richard laughed. "Especially with the castle so close. The wolf sleeps at the shepherd's door, as they say. Besides, how would you tell a criminal from an honest man just by looking? That well-dressed merchant might be a smuggler. That monk might be a forger. Appearances can be deceptive." He has a point. Medieval criminals weren't a separate class, easily identified by appearance or behavior. Many were ordinary people driven to crime by necessity or opportunity. Others maintain respectable facades while engaging in illegal activities. Your contemplation is interrupted when the tavern door swings open and a hush falls over the room. A man enters, flanked by 2 others who carry themselves with the confidence of authority. Their tunics bear the sheriff's insignia. The leader scans the room slowly. His gaze passes over you without pause, but lingering on the group in the corner with the token. After a tense moment, he approaches the tavern keeper, speaks briefly, then leaves without incident, his men following. The tavern erupts in conversation the moment the door closes behind them. "What was that about?" you ask Richard, who looks unsurprised by the interruption. "Sheriff's men checking the taverns," he says, lowering his voice. "They do it regularly, looking for known criminals or suspicious gatherings more often lately with all the robberies." You glance toward the corner again, but the men with the token have vanished, leaving only empty cups on their table. "We should head back," Richard says, noting the angle of the sun through the window. "Father will be expecting us." As you walk through Lincoln streets back to Jeffrey's shop, your mind is filled with questions about the Thieves' Guild and their tokens. Are they connected to the highway robbers or to the warrants? How organized are they? And how deep does their influence run in Lincoln's society? Jeffrey is indeed waiting for you, looking impatient. There you are, he says, gesturing for you to come inside. I need your help with an inventory. The wool shipment we're receiving tomorrow is the largest of the season, and I want everything in order. The rest of the day passes in a blur of counting, measuring, and record-keeping. Jeffrey runs his business with meticulous attention to detail, and you gain new appreciation for the complexity of medieval commerce. Weights and measures, qualities of wool, shipping arrangements, taxes, and tariffs, all must be carefully tracked and accounted for. As evening approaches, Jeffrey finally seems satisfied with the preparations. Well done, he tells you. You've earned your keep today. Tomorrow will be busy, but if all goes well, there'll be a bonus for you. You thank him and are about to retire to your now familiar pallet in the storeroom when a knock at the shop door interrupts. Jeffrey frowned. It's after hours and he's not expecting visitors. Who is it? He calls. A message from the sheriff, comes the reply. Jeffrey opens the door. Cautiously, a young man in the sheriff's livery stands outside looking nervous. Master Jeffrey, he asks. The sheriff requests your presence at the castle immediately. The sheriff, at this hour, what for? The messenger shifts uncomfortably. It concerns the prisoners captured yesterday. They've made certain allegations. The sheriff thinks you should hear them. Jeffrey's expression grows serious. Very well. It'll come. He turns to you and Richard. Both of you and me. If this concerns the attack, you should be present as testimony. The walk to Lincoln Castle is tense. The streets are nearly empty as darkness falls. Medieval towns didn't have street lighting, so after sunset, most people stayed indoors unless absolutely necessary. Those few you pass hurry along with lanterns, eager to reach their destinations before full dark. The castle looms ahead, its stone walls solid and imposing in the twilight. Guards at the gate recognize Jeffrey and allow your group to enter after a brief exchange. The messenger leads you through a series of courtyards and corridors until you reach a chamber where the sheriff awaits. He's a stern-looking man in his 40s with a closely trimmed beard and the weathered complexion of someone who spends much time outdoors. His clothing is rich but practical and a sword hangs at his side even indoors. Master Jeffrey, he says, nodding in greeting. Thank you for coming so promptly. His gaze shifts to you and Richard. And these are the witnesses from yesterday's incident. Jeffrey confirms this and the sheriff gestures for all of you to sit at a heavy wooden table. It'll be direct, he says once you're settled. The prisoners have been questioned and they've made some troubling claims. They said they were hired to attack your shipment specifically, Master Jeffrey, by someone with detailed knowledge of your business arrangements. Jeffrey's face pales slightly. An insider? Impossible. My people are loyal. The sheriff looks unconvinced. Perhaps someone has been compromised. The bandits claim they were given precise information about your plans. Even the change to the western track after you abandoned the north road. You and Richard exchanged glances, both thinking of the midnight visitor who warned about the north road being watched. Was that warning part of the trap all along? Did they name this insider? Jeffrey demands. They claim not to know, the sheriff replies. They say they received their instructions through intermediaries, never met their true employer face to face. He pauses, studying each of you carefully. However, they did provide one interesting detail. Apparently, their contact uses a distinctive token to prove their authority. The sheriff reaches into a pouch at his belt and places an object on the table. It's a wooden disc carved with a dagger crossing a key identical to the one you found and the one you saw in the tavern earlier. Do any of you recognize this? The sheriff asks. You hesitate, uncertain whether to reveal what you know. Before you can decide, Jeffrey speaks up. I've seen similar tokens in the city, he says cautiously. There are rumors of a thieves' guild using them as identification. but I thought that was just tavern talk. The sheriff's expression darkens. It's more than rumors, I am afraid. We've been investigating this guild for months. They're well organized with connections throughout Lincoln and beyond. This token confirms our suspicions that they're behind the recent highway robberies. He turns to you suddenly. You're new to Jeffrey's household, I understand. Arrived just days ago. The question carries an edge of suspicion that makes your heart race. Yes, sir. You reply, trying to appear calm. I was looking for honest work, and Jeffrey hired me to help guard his shipments. Convenient timing, the sheriff observes, arriving just before a targeted attack. Richard comes to your defense. This person saved my life, he says firmly. Rode for help when we were ambushed and found your men on the road. If they were part of the plot, why not simply leave me to die? The sheriff considered this, then nodded slowly. A fair point. Nevertheless, I'll need statements from all of you about yesterday's events and anything else you might have observed that could be relevant. What follows is a detailed questioning with ascribe your answers. You describe the attack exactly as it happened, but amid mentioning the midnight visitor or the token you found. Something holds you back from full disclosure. Perhaps an instinct that the situation is more complex than it appears. When the questioning is complete, the sheriff allows you to leave, but warns that he may call on you again as the investigation recording continues. The prisoners will be tried the day after tomorrow, the sheriff announced. You will be required to appear as witnesses. And until then, I advise you to be extremely careful about whom you trust. On the way back to Jeffrey's house, no one spoke. The atmosphere was heavy, each deep in his own thoughts. The discovery of the possibility of a mole in Jeffrey's own house had turned everything dark and suspicious. I don't believe it, Richard said after a moment of silence. Our people would never betray us like that. Jeffrey was not so sure. Every man has a price, he replied, his voice low. Or a weakness. The merchants may have threatened someone's relatives, or offered too much money to refuse. Back at home, Jeffrey called for the entire household. Only 5 people, not counting his friend and Richard. He explained everything the police had told him, his eyes never leaving each of them, as if searching for some clue. If anyone knows anything, speak up now, he said sternly. I can protect you from the gang, but I can't do anything if you continue to go against me. The servants seemed genuinely surprised. An older woman, the housekeeper, crossed herself and muttered a prayer. A young apprentice's face drained of color at the mention of the gang. After dismissing everyone, Jeffrey turned to you. I trust Richard's judgment of you, he said. If you were part of this plot, you had plenty of chances to do it yesterday. Instead, you helped save my son and the shipment. You thanked him for his confidence, relieved to know you were still in the house, at least for now. That night, you toss and turn again, unable to sleep. Lying on the thin mattress, staring at the dark ceiling, you think about the Thieves' Guild, the midnight stranger, the mysterious wooden card, the men in the tavern, and the captured bandits, all the pieces of a puzzle that is slowly coming together. And then, there's that sound again, light footsteps on the tiled floor. The midnight stranger has returned. This time, you don't pretend to sleep. You sit up, your hand on the dagger beside you. Who is it? You ask quietly, your voice strained. A figure steps out of the darkness, a slender figure, hooded, unrecognizable. Keep your voice low, the figure whispers. I bring a warning. Another warning? You say, not hiding your disbelief. The western side road wasn't safe last time. The figure chuckles. But you survived, didn't you? And caught two of our most reckless. Not a bad result, all things considered. Not a bad result. You repeated, stunned. Richard almost died, and so did I. But they're both still here, the man replied, while the two who broke the guild's rules are now waiting to be hanged. Sometimes justice comes in unexpected ways. The vague answer only made you more confused. You mean, those bandits weren't under orders from the guild? The guild never allowed attacks on merchants in Lincoln, the figure said, moving a little closer. That affected business. Those two were acting independently, using guild cards without permission. And now they've been dealt with. The information sent a chill down your spine. If the guild could control events in secret, making the law punish its own members for their treachery, then their power was formidable. Why are you telling me this? You ask. Because tomorrow will be dangerous, the stranger replies. The sheriff believes there is a traitor in Jeffrey's house. If he can't find the real culprit, he might just arrest someone at random, just to please the merchants. The words send a shiver down your spine. In these times, justice is fragile, and if they need a scapegoat, you, a newcomer with no relatives or influence, are the ideal choice. So what should I do? You ask, lowering your voice. Let someone else handle the shipment of wool tomorrow, the stranger advises. Find a reason to stay in town. And keep an eye on the cathedral, at noon. Look for the chalk mark of a key on the third pillar, south. Transept. If you see it, meet me at the old mill beyond the east gate at sunset. You'll have more information then. Before you can ask more questions, the visitor slips away. Their footsteps fade to nothing. You're leaving alone again with even more to think about than before. Morning comes too quickly. You've barely slept, your mind racing with questions and possibilities. When Jeffrey outlines the day's tasks, assigning you to help load the wool shipment at the city gates, you're faced with a decision. Follow your usual routine or heed the midnight visitors warn and find a reason to stay in the city. After some consideration, you approached Jeffrey with a request. If it's agreeable to you, sir, I thought I might better serve by preparing the storeroom for the new wool. Yesterday's inventory showed we'll need more space than we currently have. Jeffrey considers this, then nods. Good thinking. Richard and I can handle the shipment with the regular men. You reorganize the storeroom and ensure we're ready to receive the wool when it comes. Arrives. With that settled, you spend the morning moving wool bales and clearing space. It's physical work, but gives you time to think without arousing suspicion. When midday approaches, you make an excuse about using to purchase some supplies for the reorganization and head toward the cathedral. Lincoln Cathedral is a magnificent structure, one of the tallest buildings in the world at this time in history. Its soaring spirits and intricate stonework are awe-inspiring, even to modern eyes. Inside, the vast space is cool and dim. Light filtering through colorful stained glass to cast rainbow patterns on the stone floor. You move through the cathedral as if admiring its architecture, but your true purpose is to check the third pillar in the south transept. Sure enough, there you find a small chalk drawing of a key, discreet enough that most visitors will never notice it, but unmistakable once you know what to look for. The sign confirms that your midnight visitor expects to meet you at sunset. But should you go, it could be another trap, like the warning about the north road that leads you and Richard into danger on the western track. Yet, if the visitor is telling the truth about the sheriff looking for a scapegoat, you might need their help to avoid being falsely accused. You return to Jeffrey's shop, mind still weighing this dilemma. The afternoon passes in productive labor, the storeroom gradually taking shape to accommodate the new shipment. Richard and Jeffrey returned safely with the wool. seeming relieved that the delivery went without incident. The sheriff posted extra men on the roads today. Richard tells you as you help unload the cart. No bandit would dare attack with so many guards about. As sunset approaches, you need to make your final decision. The old mill beyond the east gate is outside the city walls. A potentially dangerous location after dark, yet the prospect of learning more about the Thieves' Guild and possibly clearing yourself of any suspicion is tempting. In the end, curiosity and self-preservation win out. You tell Jeffrey you want to visit the market before it closes, promise to return before full darkness. He agrees, reminds you to be careful. News of the Thieves' Guild has made everyone more cautious. The East Gate is less busy than the North and South Gates, as it leads to villages smaller than major trade routes. The guards pay little attention to those leaving the city this late in the day, and you pass through without incident. The old mill stands about 4 miles beyond the walls. A dilapidated structure that has clearly not been used for its original purpose. In years, the water wheel is broken, the mill pond choked with weeds. It's an ideal meeting place, isolated enough for privacy, but close enough to the city to be reached quickly. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, you approach the mill cautiously. There's no sign of your mysterious contact, and for a moment, you wonder if you've made a terrible mistake in coming here alone. Then, a shadow moves near the mill's doorway, resolving into a hooded figure. Similar to your midnight visitor. But as they step forward and push back their hood, you realize this is a different person. An older man with a neatly trimmed gray beard and sharp, intelligent eyes. "You came?" he says simply. "Good. We have much to discuss and little time." "Who are you?" you ask, maintaining a safe distance. "My name wouldn't mean anything to you," he replies. "What matters is that I represent the guild, and we have a mutual problem that needs solving." "The guild," you repeat. "The Thieves' Guild that uses these tokens." You produce the wooden disc you took from the messenger, which your midnight visitor never reclaimed. The Mont's eyebrows rose slightly. "You've been collecting our property, I see." "Yes, that's one of our tokens, though, as I believe you've been told. The men captured on the western track were using them without authorization." "Why would a Thieves' Guild be concerned with unauthorized theft?" You ask the question that's been bothering you since last night. The man smiles thinly. "A common misconception. We're not simply thieves. We're a guild in the true sense of the word. We regulate our profession, enforce standards, protect our members, and yes, punish those who break our rules." "Rules for criminals," you say skeptically. "Or rules for survival," he corrects. "Print a world where the penalty for stealing a loaf of bread can be the same as for murder. Organization is the only protection. We don't sanction violence except in self-defense. We don't target local merchants who support the city's economy. And we certainly don't allow our members to act as bandits on the open road." It's a fascinating glimpse into the organization of medieval crime. Not just random acts of desperation, but a structured system with its own internal logic and governance. The sheriff believes someone in Jeffrey's household is working with your guild. You say, "Is that true?" The Mont's expression gives nothing away. What matters now is that the sheriff will want someone to blame. The merchant guild is pressing him to make an example of someone. And as an outsider with no connections or history in Lincoln, you're the easiest target. "So what do you suggest?" you ask, increasingly concerned about your position. "We can help you leave the city tonight," he offers. "Provide you with enough money to reach the next town where you'd be beyond the sheriff's immediate jurisdiction." "And why would you help me?" you ask, suspicious of this unexpected generosity. The man smiles again, more truly this time. "Let's say we recognize potential. You've shown resourcefulness and discretion. Such qualities are valuable regardless of which side of the law one stands on." "Is he recruiting you?" The idea is both alarming and oddly flattering. But leaving Lincoln now would make you look guilty, confirming any suspicions the sheriff might have. I haven't done anything wrong, you say firmly. Running away will only make me look guilty. Innocence is no protection in a system that needs scapegoats, the man counters. But if you want leave, there is another option. We can provide evidence implicating the true informant within Jeffrey's household. Now, this is interesting and potentially dangerous. Who is it, you ask? That information has a price, he says. We would expect certain considerations in return, such as nothing illegal, at least not immediately, he assures you. Perhaps occasionally looking the other way when guild business is conducted near Jeffrey's shop, or sharing information about valuable shipments coming through Lincoln, not to be stolen, merely taxed suitable. In other words, become an informant yourself. The very thing you're trying to avoid being accused of. The moral complexities of medieval justice and crime are becoming increasingly clear to you. In a system where law enforcement is corrupt, punishments are brutal and often arbitrary, and poverty drives many to desperate measures, the line between criminal and victim can be blurred. Before you can respond, a sound from the road toward Lincoln catches both your attention. The unmistakable clatter of multiple horses approaching at speed. The guild member curses quietly. Sheriff's men, someone must have followed you. I was careful, you protested. Although your heart is racing at the prospect of being caught in such a compromised situation. Clearly not careful enough, he says, already backing toward the shadows behind the mill. You have a choice now. Run with me or stay and try to explain why you're meeting with a known member of the Thieves Guild outside the city walls after dark. It's a crucial moment of decision. Running would certainly make you appear guilty, but being caught with this man could be just as harmful to your claims of innocence. And if the sheriff is truly looking for a scapegoat, this meeting could provide all the evidence he needs to condemn you. The hoofbeats are getting closer. You have only seconds to decide. In that split second of decision, a third option presents itself. You turn to the guild member with urgent intensity. Neither, you say quickly. Too suspicious either way. We need to appear to have legitimate business here. Understanding flashes in the older man's eyes. Immediately, he pulls a small sack from his belt and tosses it into the weeds near the mill's broken water wheel. Then moves several paces away from you. Just as the riders come into view, you raise your voice as if in the middle of a transaction. 15 pennies is my final offer for the fishing rights, and that's being generously considering the state of this mill pond. The guild member, demonstrating impressive quick thinking, responds with equal conviction. 17 or nothing. I've got another interested party from St. Mary's Parish who will pay that without hesitation. The lead rider, wearing the sheriff's colors, reins in his horse and studies the scene with obvious suspicion. 5 more men fans out behind him, their hands resting meaningfully on their weapons. What business brings you outside the walls so close to curfew? The leader demands, addressing you directly. You gesture to the dilapidated mill trying to secure fishing rights for my employer, Master Jeffrey the wool merchant. The parish has let this mill fall into disrepair, but the pond remains. Holds fish. We thought we might supplement our household stores. The sheriff's man turns his attention to your companion. And you are Walter Fletcher. The guild member replies regularly, using what you assume is a false name. I oversee the church lands in this district. This mill hasn't ground flour in years, but I am authorized to lease the fishing rights. The leader dismounts and walks a slow circle around you both, clearly not entirely convinced. Unusual hours for such negotiations. My fault entirely, you admit, adopt an apologetic tone. I only learned of the opportunity this morning and wanted to secure it before anyone else could. Master Jeffrey keeps us quite busy during regular hours. One of the other riders has been examining the area and approaches his leader. No other horses, he reports. If they rode here, they didn't tether their mounts nearby. We walked, Walter explained. It's a short distance from the gate and a pleasant evening for it. The leader's suspicion hasn't fully abated, but without evidence of misconduct, he seems reluctant to take action. After a tense moment, he remounts his horse. The curfew bell will ring soon, he warns. I suggest you conclude your business quickly and return to the city. These roads aren't safe after dark. You both nod respectfully and the riders continue on their patrol, though one glances back several times as they move away. When they're safely out of earshot, you exhale slowly, the tension draining from your body. Quick thinking, the guild member murmurs appreciatively. Many would have panicked. It seemed the only way that didn't immediately condemn us both, you replied. But I doubt they're completely convinced. Convinced enough to continue their patrol rather than arrest us. He points out in these uncertain times, that's a victory. The encounter has resolved nothing about your larger dilemma. However, you're still potentially under suspicion, and the guild's offer of evidence against the real informant in Jeffrey's household remains pending. About your offer, you begin, but the man holds up a hand to stop you. Not here, not now, hey. We've pushed our luck enough for one night, the stranger whispered. The guild will contact you when it's safe. He glanced at the darkening sky. Curfew's about to ring. You should get back to the city. What about you? You asked. He just smiled knowingly. I have my own way. He bent down to the grass where he'd hidden a cloth bag earlier. Take this, as a thank you. You took the small leather bag hesitantly. Inside were a few silver coins, more than you'd ever earned working for Jeffrey. I can't take. You can, and you will, the stranger interrupted, firmly. Consider it a reward for keeping quiet. And remember, the guild protects those who are worth protecting. With that meaningful remark, he pulled up his hood and walked toward the grove of trees near the mill, disappearing into the gathering darkness. You put the coins in your pocket, feeling uneasy. Even though you knew that refusing would have consequences, the feeling of accepting a bribe still made you uneasy. You walked briskly toward the east gate of Lincoln, arriving just as the curfew bells began to ring. The guards gave you disapproving looks, but didn't ask any more questions. Lincoln after curfew was a completely different place. The streets were deserted, the windows were closed, only a few people patrolled silently, lanterns swayed in the wind. You crept quietly through the darkness, avoiding all attention, until you reached Jeffrey's house. But strangely, the house was plunged into darkness. Not a single light was on in the shop, which Jeffrey usually kept lit until late at night as a sign of prosperity. You circle around to the back door, the servant's entrance, and are relieved to find it unlocked. Stepping inside, you strain to listen, but there is no sound. Jeffrey, you call softly. Richard? No response. You quickly relight the oil lamp from the ashes of the stove and begin searching the house. The living room is empty. The money room is empty. Upstairs, you find the bedrooms untouched, the beds untouched. A chill creeps into your chest. What happened while you were gone? There is one place left, the storeroom where you slept. You open the door, and the light shines on a figure sitting on a mattress. It's Richard. His face is serious. There you are, he says, his voice drained of emotion. We've been looking for you. What's wrong? You ask. Where's your father? Where are the others? Richard stood up slowly. At the castle. The sheriff called again after you left. They arrested Edward for being a thief. You froze. Edward, the quiet, honest, 16-year-old apprentice, was the last person you could imagine involved in the crime. Edward, you repeated, incredulous. That's ridiculous. My father said so, Richard nodded. But the sheriff said there was evidence. They found a guild card in Edward's belongings, and a captured thief claimed to be one. You remembered the strangely engraved wooden disc, exactly like the one in your pocket now. If Edward really had one, it would be a huge disadvantage. But something wasn't right. Did Edward accept it? You asked. Richard was silent for a moment, then his voice grew heavy. He denied it at first, said someone had put a tag in his stuff, but he swallowed. The police used coercion. In the end, Edward told them what they wanted to hear. You didn't have to ask. In this day and age, that meant torture. A timid, hard-working, immature boy, now dragged into a crime he probably didn't understand. The thought made you want to throw up. This can't be, you said, your voice as firm as ever. Edward wouldn't betray your father. Someone else must be responsible. Richard studies his face in the lamplight. Father thinks the same. That's why he sent me back here to find you. He's worried that whoever planted evidence on Edward might try to do the same to others in the household. A chill runs through you at these words. The silver pennies in your pocket suddenly feel like burning coals. If the sheriff's men were to look for you now, how would you explain them? Or the guild token for that matter. Where are the others? You ask, referring to Geoffrey's small household staff. At the castle, still being questioned, Richard says. Father insists on being present for each interview. He runs a hand through his hair, clearly exhausted. It's been a difficult evening and Edward Richards' face falls. He'll stay in the dungeons until the trial. 2 days from now alongside the highway robbers. He meets your eyes directly. Father doesn't believe Edward is guilty, but the evidence is strong. Unless something changes, he'll likely hang. The injustice of it burns in your chest. Edward facing execution for a crime he almost certainly didn't commit, while the real conspirator remains free and you with guild money and a token in your possession are potentially next in line for accusation. We need to find the real informant, you say with sudden determination. How? The sheriff thinks he's already found his man. You consider your options carefully. You could reveal what you know about the guild, including your meetings with its representatives. But that might only cast suspicion on yourself. Without concrete evidence pointing to someone else, your testimony alone wouldn't save Edward. Let me think about it, you say finally. Perhaps there's a way to uncover the truth without putting others at risk. Richard nods, too tired to argue. Father will return when the questioning is completed. Try to get some rest until then. But rest is impossible. After Richard leaves, you examine the guild token and silver pennies by lamplight, wondering if these items that now incriminate you could somehow be used to save Edward instead. A radical idea begins to form in your mind. What if you could catch the real informant in the act, force them to reveal themselves or provide evidence the sheriff couldn't ignore? It would be dangerous, possibly fatal if you miscalculated. But the alternative is watching an innocent boy hang while you live with the knowledge that you might have saved him. You're still turning over possibilities when Geoffrey finally returns well past midnight. He looks haggarded, his normally confident bearing replaced by the slumped shoulders of a man carrying a heavy burden. Richard said he found you, he said wearily, sinking onto a chair in the kitchen where you've been waiting. Did he tell you about Edward? You nod, pushing a cup of watered wine towards him. He accepts it gratefully. It's nonsense, Geoffrey continues after taking a long drink. Edward is no coach. but the sheriff is under pressure to resolve this quickly. The Merchant Guild wants the roads safe for commerce, and the easiest way to achieve that is to hang someone, guilty or not. What if we could find the real informant? You suggest carefully. Jeffrey looks up, a spark of interest cutting through his exhaustion. How? You've been refining your plan over the past hours, and while it's still dangerous, it might just work. We create an opportunity too tempting to resist, you explain. Announce another valuable shipment, but tell different details to different members of your household. When the thieves act on specific information, we'll know who leaked it. A trap, Jeffrey says, considering the idea. But the risk will be mainly mine, you assure him. I'd coordinate with the sheriff to have men in position to catch any attackers. And if the real informant is someone outside my household, or if the Thieves Guild doesn't take the bait, these are valid concerns. Then at least we'll have demonstrated reasonable doubt about Edward's guilt, you say. Enough perhaps to spare his life, if not clear him completely. Jeffrey stares into his cup. For a long moment, it's a desperate plan, he says finally. But these are desperate times. I'll not stand by while an innocent boy hangs for something he didn't do. He looks up, meets your eyes. What do you need from me? By morning, your plan is in motion. Jeffrey calls his household remaining staff together and announces an unprecedented opportunity. A rush order for the finest wool from a merchant in London, offering double the usual price if it can be delivered within the week. This could be the most profitable transaction we've ever made, he tells them, his acting convincing enough to draw excited murmurs from the assembled staff. But secrecy is essential. Our competitors would do anything to intercept this shipment. He then speaks to each person individually, giving slightly different details about the route, timing, and nature of the shipment. To his household manager, he claims the wool will travel by the North Road on Wednesday. To his shop assistant, the East Road on Thursday. To Richard, who is part of the plan, the South Road on Friday. To further sell the deception, Jeffrey makes visible preparations, ordering extra carts, discuss guard arrangements within earshot of the staff, sending messages to wool suppliers. The entire household buzzes with anticipation of the fictitious windfall. Meanwhile, you have a more difficult task, convincing the sheriff to cooperate. With Jeffrey's backing, you secure an audience at the castle where you carefully present your plan. The sheriff, a pragmatic man despite his harsh methods, listens with growing interest. A clever trap, he concedes when you finish. But what makes you so certain Edward isn't guilty? The evidence against him is substantial. Edward has neither the contacts nor the cunning to orchestrate something like this, you argue, and he certainly doesn't have the temperament for betrayal. Someone else is using him as a scapegoat. The sheriff studies you thoughtfully. You seem very invested in this matter for someone who's only recently joined Jeffrey's household. It's a dangerous moment. Your enthusiasm could easily be interpreted as suspicious in itself. You choose your next words carefully. I know what it's like to be judged unfairly, you say, allowing genuine emotion to color your voice. Edward reminds me of my younger brother. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to help him. Whether it's your sincerity or simply the opportunity to capture more criminals. The sheriff eventually agrees to position men along all three potential routes. But he warned. As you leave, if this trap catches nothing, it changes nothing for Edward. The evidence against him remains. You understand the stakes perfectly. If your plan fails, Edward hangs, and you might well join him if any suspicion falls on you instead. The next 2 days are a blur of preparation and tension. You help Jeffrey maintain the charade of the valuable shipment while secretly coordinating with the sheriff's men. The selected routes are scouted, hiding places identified, signals arranged. Throughout it all, you watch the household staff carefully. Look for any signs of suspicious behavior. A staff member leaving the house at unusual hours perhaps, or displaying unexpected wealth. But everyone seems genuine in their excitement about the London Order, giving you hey. Tonight we're diving into a fascinating journey through medieval England's criminal underworld. Ever wondered what would happen if you suddenly found yourself as a lawbreaker in those harsh, unforgiving times? You're about to find out just how quickly your criminal career might come to an end in a world where justice was swift, brutal, and often unpredictable. But before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just woken up in medieval England sometime in the 13th century. The year is 1202 and you find yourself in Lincoln, a bustling northern city with impressive stone buildings and narrow winding streets filled with the pungent smells of daily life. The morning bells are ringing from the magnificent cathedral that dominates the skyline. People are already busy at work setting up market stalls, hauling goods, and going about their business. The good news is that you've awakened in one of England's important cities, a place of commerce and opportunity. The bad news, Lincoln, despite its modest population of about 7,000 souls, is experiencing what you might call a crime wave. This small city has recently seen 114 murders, 89 robberies with violence, and 65 woundings in fights. And yet, only 2 people have been executed for these crimes. Those odds might seem encouraging if you're planning a life of crime, but don't get too comfortable. Medieval justice has ways of catching up to you when you least expect it. You rise from your straw pallet in a small, drafty room above a tavern. The wooden floorboards creak beneath your feet, and through the small window, you can see the morning mist clinging to the cobbled streets below. You're hungry, you have no money, and in this unfamiliar world, you're considering how to survive. Perhaps a bit of theft, maybe picking a pocket or two in the busy marketplace. Before you make that fateful decision, you should understand what you're getting yourself into. In this world, law and order operates very differently from what you're used to. There are no police officers patrolling the streets, no forensic evidence, no surveillance cameras. But there's something else that might be even more effective. Everyone knows everyone else in their community, and strangers stand out like a peacock in a chicken coop. As you step out into the narrow street, the cold morning air fills your lungs. You notice a wooden gibbet standing ominously at the city's edge. A body hangs there, swinging slightly in the breeze, the remains already picked at by birds. It's been there for weeks, a grim reminder of what happens to those who break the law and get caught. The sight sends a shiver down your spine, but you're desperate and need to survive. Thinking of causing trouble, are you? Comes a gruff voice beside you. An older man with a weathered face and a gray beard has appeared at your side. I wouldn't if I were you. See that poor soul on the gibbet? That's what happens when you cross the sheriff or steal from the wrong merchant. But I've heard people get away with all sorts of crimes here, you reply, thinking about those statistics. The old man chuckled, a dry sound like leaves rustling. Some do until they don't. The law may be slow, but it has a long memory. And it's not just the law you need to worry about. It's the people. Try stealing from a baker and his entire guild will be after you. Rob a merchant and his family won't rest until you're caught. We take care of our own here. You ponder this as you walk toward the market square, your stomach growing with hunger. The temptation to simply grab an apple from a vendor's stand is strong, but you hesitate to remind the old man's warning and the body on the gibbet. In medieval England, even the smallest crimes could lead to severe punishment. You wouldn't have the luxury of modern legal protections. Trials were quick affairs, often based more on your reputation than actual evidence. If people suspect you are of bad character, that alone may be enough to convict you. As you wander through the market, you notice how differently the various social classes are treated. A nobleman strides confidently through the crowd, which parts respectfully before him. His fine clothes and sword mark him as someone of importance. Meanwhile, a ragged beggar is being roughly pushed away from a baker's stall by two burly apprentices. "Get away with you," one of them shouts. "No begging here, or we'll call the constable." The beggar shuffles away, muttering under him breath. You realize that your appearance might already mark you as suspicious. Your clothing is strange by their standards, and you carry yourself differently. People are already giving you curious glances. In medieval society, your place was largely determined by birth, and trying to rise above your station could be seen as troublesome or even criminal. Vagrancy, wandering without purpose or visible means of support, was considered a breach. If you couldn't show that you belonged somewhere or had legitimate business, you might be accused of being a vagabond, which could lead to punishment. Your stomach growls again, louder this time. A woman selling bread gives you a suspicious look. You need to find a way to earn some money, and quickly, before hunger drives you to make a decision you'll regret. Approaching a burly man loading barrels onto a cart, you ask if he needs any help. He looks you up and down. "Assess your worth." "You look strong enough," he said finally. "I could use another pair of hands loading these barrels onto the cart. It'll give you a penny and a meal for your trouble. It's not much, but it's honest work. And right now, staying on the right side of the law seems like your best option." As you help load the heavy barrels, feeling the rough wood against your palms, you strike up a conversation with the man, hoping to learn more about this new world you found yourself in. "Been in Lincoln long?" the man asks, grunting as he lifts a barrel. "I am just passing through," you reply, not wanting to reveal too much. "What's it like living here?" The man wipes sweat from his brow. "It's a good city mostly. Sheriff keeps order when he can, although there's been more trouble lately than I care for. Just last month, a gang broke into Thomas the silversmith's shop, took everything he had, and beat him half to death. The constable caught one of them, but the rest got away." "What happened to the one they caught?" you ask, already suspecting the answer. "Hanged, of course," the man says matter-of-factly. "That's what happens to thieves when they're caught. Although, if you steal something worth less than 12p, you might just get flogged or put in the stocks instead." You help the man finish loading his cart, and true to his word, he gives you a penny and leads you to a nearby tavern where you're served a bowl of thick pottage, a stew of barley, peas, and root vegetables, and a chunk of coarse bread. It's hardly gourmet fare, but it fills your belly. As you eat, the tavern fills with locals ending their workday. The atmosphere is lively with people drinking ale, playing dice, and sharing stories. You listen carefully, picking up bits of information about life in medieval Lincoln. A group of men at a nearby table are discussing a recent trial by ordeal. "Did you hear about William the Tanner?" one of them says, accused of stealing a silver goblet from the church. "Had to carry a red-hot iron bar 3 paces. And another asked eagerly, his hand festered. "Guilty as sin he was. They'll hang him next week." You almost choke on your bread. Trial by ordeal. It sounds barbaric, but it was a common method of determining guilt in the early medieval period, reflecting the belief that God would intervene to protect the innocent. By 1202, the year you found yourself in, trial by ordeal was still practiced, though it would be officially abolished in 1215 when the Pope decided that priests should no longer participate in such trials. The alternative, which was becoming more common, was tried by jury, though not the carefully selected evidence weighing the juries of your time. These were groups of local men who often already knew the indictment and based their verdict largely on the defendant's reputation and their own knowledge of the community. As night falls, you need to find somewhere to sleep. With your penny, you might be able to secure a space on the tavern floor among other travelers, but the prospect doesn't appeal. Instead, you decide to inquire about more work, hoping to find a place that might offer lodging as well. The tavern keeps points you towards a merchant's home where they might need an extra hand. Tell Jeffrey that Watt sent you. He suggests he's always looking for strong arms to help with his wool business. You thank him and make your way through the darkening streets. Medieval cities didn't have street lighting, and after sunset, most honest folk were indoors. Being out at night without good reason could itself be suspicious. You hurry along, keenly aware of eyes watching from shadowed doorways. The merchant's house is larger than most, with a shop at the front and living quarters behind and above. A young apprentice answers your knock, eyeing you wearily. I was sent by something from the tavern, you explain. I am looking for work in him. Thought Jeffrey might have some. The apprentice disappears inside, returning moments later with an older man dressed in good quality but not luxurious clothing. This must be Jeffrey the wool merchant. What sent you? Did he? Jeffrey's eyes are shrewd, assessed. I do need someone to help guard my shipment tonight. I have a cart of wool arriving and these days you can't be too careful. Can you handle yourself if trouble comes? You nod, hoping you won't actually have to test your medieval combat skills. I can, sir. Good. You'll stay with the cart once it arrives until morning. I'll pay you 3 pennies for the night's work, and you can sleep in the storeroom tomorrow. It's a fair offer, and certainly better than ending up in trouble with the law on your very first day in medieval England. You agree, and Jeffrey shows you where to wait for the cart. As darkness fully descends on the city, you find yourself standing at the edge of the merchant's property, waiting for the wool shipment. The streets are nearly deserted now with only the occasional watchman carrying a lantern patrolling the main thoroughfares. From nearby taverns, you can hear muffled singing and laughter, but otherwise, the night is eerily quiet compared to the cities you're used to. The cart arrives just before the city gates close for the night. 2 men accompany it, the driver and another guard, both looking tired from their journey. They eye you suspiciously until Jeffrey appears and explains that you'll be helping to guard the valuable cargo overnight. Don't let anyone near it. Jeffrey instructs as the cart is secured in his yard. Wool fetches a good price these days, and there are plenty who'd steal it if given half a chance. You nod solemnly, resolving to stay alert despite your fatigue. The other guard will take the first watch while you rest. Then you'll switch midway through the night. As you settle down to wait for your shift, you reflect on what you've learned so far about crime and punishment in medieval England. It's a world where justice can be harsh and arbitrary, where your fate might depend more on your reputation and connections than on actual evidence. The punishments, hanging, flogging, mutilation, are designed not just to punish the guilty, but to serve as terrible warnings to others. Yet, despite these deterrents, crime clearly flourishes. The disparity between rich and poor creates temptation, and the lack of consistent law enforcement means many criminals escape justice. It's a precarious balance where the fear of punishment competes with the desperation of need. Your contemplation is interrupted when the other guard nudges you awake for your shift. The night is at its darkest now, the stars obscured by clouds and a light rain has begun to fall. You pace around the cart, staying under the shelter of a nearby overhang when possible. Your senses alert for any signs of trouble. Around midnight, you hear footsteps approaching. Several people trying to move quietly, but not entirely succeeding. You duck into the shadows, your heart pounding. Are you about to witness an attempted theft? Should you raise the alarm or wait to see what happens? 3 figures appear at the edge of the yard, moving toward the cart. They're dressed in dark clothing, their faces partially covered. One carries what looks like a small prior or crowbar. You clear your throat loudly. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The figures freeze, Then the largest of them steps forward. And who might you be? His voice is low, threatening. I am guarding this cart for Jeffrey the wool merchant, you reply, trying to keep your voice steady. And I suggest you move along before there's trouble. The man laughs, a harsh sound in the quiet night. 3 of us, 1 of you. I'd say the trouble's already here. You're about to respond when a window above opens and Jeffrey's voice rings out. What's going on down there, John? William, get out here. The would-be thieves exchange glances, clearly reviewing their plan now that others are being alerted. After a tense moment, they back away, disappearing into the darkness with a threatened threat. Well. Yet instead of swift condemnation, the proceedings take a curious turn. The first to be questioned, a wiry man in his 40s with a weathered face, denies every accusation. He spoke confidently, even respectfully, calling several townspeople by name as character witnesses. 2 merchants step forward, offering vague but positive statements about his reliability. The justice listens, expression unreadable, but you notice the faintest narrowing of his eyes. When the second prisoner, a stout woman with shrewd eyes, is called forth, her strategy is different. She doesn't deny the thefts, but claims they were acts of desperation, measures taken to feed her children during the harsh winter. It's a clever move. The crowd stirs uneasily, torn between sympathy and suspicion. You watch as the justice consults with his clerks, murmuring behind gloved hands. Minutes stretch on. Finally, he raises a hand, silencing the crowd. In light of the testimony and lack of concrete evidence, he says gravely, these accused shall not hang today. Instead, they will be fined and branded, as a warning to others. A wave of murmurs ripples through the crowd. Some gasp, others grumble. Branding, permanent and shameful, is a harsh but common punishment for thieves in this era. It spares their lives but marks them forever, a visible sign of criminality. You catch yourself recoiling at the idea, yet it's not the worst fate that could have befallen them. As the warrants are led away, one of the women glances sideways at you, her eyes sharp and assess. You're not sure why, but it unsettles you. Someone nearby mutters, fine today, stealing again tomorrow. Another replies, better than the gallows. A reminder that justice here is less about reform and more about deterrence. Punishment met out publicly, dramatically, and sometimes arbitrarily. You turn to head back to Jeffrey's, still digesting what you've witnessed. The market square is returning to its usual rhythm, traders shouting prices and children darting through puddles. Life continues, indifferent to guilt or innocence. Back at the merchant's house, Jeffrey is in the middle of a heated conversation with a man in a faded but once fine cloak, another merchant by the look of him. They stopped talking as you entered. There you are, Jeffrey said. I trust the morning spectacle was enlightening? You nod. I saw the warrant's judgment. The justice spared their lives. Jeffrey snorts. He always does. Either he's soft or someone's lining his purse. Those people will be at it again before harvest, mark my words. He waves you over to a side table. But enough of that. I have a task for you, if you're willing. A shipment of dyed cloth is due to arrive tomorrow from Boston, and I want someone I trust to help inspect it.